Well, joining me on the phone now is Tom Siegel of Pricewise, who's having a look back at last weekend's action at the Curragh, with a view to the Derby and the Oaks as well. Tom, we'll start with a nice easy one for you. Should they go the Derby route with Magician?
Personally, I wouldn't go the Derby route. I don't think he'll stay the trip in the Derby. He showed so much pace in the Irish Guineas. I mean, he was the only horse to lay up with the it seemed like a suicidal early pace of Trading Leather and the other horse up the front there. So for me, he showed so much pace. I don't see any need for it. You've got to remember also that Dawn Approach is taken out of the miling division to a certain extent. He's going for the Derby. I can't imagine they'll drop him back to a mile unless he runs, if he clearly doesn't stay in the Derby. So that opens up races like the St James's Palace and the Sussex Stakes and races like that for Magician. I think that's the route they've got to go for him. Furthermore, they haven't got an older miler, have they? Declaration of War was clearly found, had his limitations exposed. So they need a horse for the good mile races. They haven't got one, whereas they seem to have quite a few for the staying races. Battle Marengo, Ruler of the World, quite a few floating around. For me, it's a no-brainer for Magician to go to stay in the milers route, and I think that's where they'll go.
Magician and Joseph O'Brien win by 4 lengths. Chased home, Gale Force 10, Trading Leather.
If they do decide to run in the Derby, what do you think that says about the relative merits of Ruler of the World and Battle of Marengo?
Well, the thing about I was lucky enough to go around Coolmore a few months ago, and the whole operation is devoted to the Epsom Derby. They love the Epsom Derby. That's the race they want to win. So my feeling is if he does run, it doesn't necessarily mean that they don't fancy any of the others. I think it just means they're throwing all their eggs in one basket. What it might say is that they're not convinced they can beat Dawn Approach with the other ones, but I think they're second and third and fourth best in the race. Maybe Andre Farber's horse comes in there as well, but I don't think it's necessarily suggesting that Battle of Marengo can't win the Derby if Magician runs. My personal feeling is that Magician can't win the Derby, so that's the one I wouldn't run. I think it was only 7 days ago before Epsom. He showed so much pace. He wouldn't be a horse I would think could win the Derby, Magician, and I would definitely go for the miling route.
I'm not going to ask you for a tip. That comes in Saturday's paper, of course. But can you see any value left in the Derby at this stage?
It's a tricky one. I mean, obviously, it all depends about Dawn Approach. I've just been sort of finishing off a weekender piece about this, and it's just interesting to see. One of the more fascinating things about the Derby market will be the way Dawn Approach goes, because on pedigree, he's not a stayer by any stretch of the imagination. He's a potential stayer, but he's not a stout stayer or he doesn't have as much stamina in his pedigree as Steve the Stars did, for example. And Steve the Stars, believe it or not, was second favourite in the Derby. Fame and Glory was favourite over Steve the Stars. Steve the Stars was, I think, started 11-4, but I remember 3-1 being readily available on the day. What price is Dawn Approach going to be? My personal feeling is that they'll probably smash into him and they'll probably start odds on, but I think that means that there will be some value floating around, because on pedigree he's definitely not a certain stayer at the trip. I think the O'Briens will have to make it a really strong pace. They'll try and test his stamina and see what happens from there. So therefore there might be some value in backing a stout stayer to come from to certainly hit the frame when we're talking about 5-1 the second favourite at the moment. So there is each way value around to be had, yeah.
OK, moving on to the fillies. You've been quite critical in the past of the 1,000 guineas at Newmarket, saying you thought it was a false result. Has your opinion changed seeing what Just the Judge did in the Irish version on Sunday?
No, because I thought Just the Judge was the best filly in the Guineas. I thought the race went against her at Newmarket. She sort of was racing on the other side, away from Sky Lantern and the other ones. And Sky Lantern, the one that came and beat her, and I thought she had to do a lot of the donkey work on her side. She was the one that sort of had to take up the running a long way from home and sort of go for home, and then she was just caught on the line, really. I still don't think it was a great race, but I do think Just the Judge is a good filly. I mean, she won the Irish Guineas very easily. Once again, I don't think there was any great strength and depth about it, but you can only beat what's been put in front of you. I thought she was the best filly in the English 1000, and she proved herself to be the best in the Irish 1000. So at the moment, she'd be at the top of the pecking order for me of all the fillies going forward.
And up towards the finish, it's a classic victory for the Qatar family as Charlie Hills wins with Just the Judge and Jamie Spencer from Just Pretending.
And what about her trip? She looks a bit of a stayer to me. Do you think she'll stick to around a mile?
Well, I think there's more opportunities for her at a mile, isn't she? I presume she'll go for the Coronation Stakes at Ascot. Stiff uphill finish will suit her there, so I presume that's the route we'll go. But then there's races like the Nassau Stakes or the Pretty Polly in Ireland, or races like that for over 12 furlongs that she can go for. But she's a bit like Magician, really. If you're winning Grade 1's, Group 1's top races over a mile and winning them easily like they both did at the weekend, I don't really see the need to change. I mean, there's not going to be no other fillies I can think of coming out of the woodwork to challenge her in the Coronation Stakes. Why take the risk of, sort of upping her in trip and, bumping into a different kettle of fish, a different type of filly, maybe a better type of filly. So for me, I'd stick to the mile route with her, definitely.
OK, and a quick word on the Oaks now. Once again, I'm not going to ask you for a tip, but do you know in the back of your mind which way you'll be going?
Well, I've already backed one called Say, Aidan O'Brien's other filly, in the race, apart from Moth, simply for the fact that she's a cast iron stare. She's one of those fillies that's just won a maiden for Aidan O'Brien, and she's got a massive amount to find on form. She might not be good enough, but at a big price, I backed her, so I'd still give her a good chance. A few others in there. Banoffee, I thought, was impressive in the Chester Vase. I think she's got a chance. Moth obviously has a chance, as does the favourite is there to be beaten, Secret Gesture. I think she's a bit short, really. The nothing race she won at Lingfield, but I think everyone's putting 2 and 2 together and coming up with sort of look here with her, a horse from Rafe Beckett's yard that sort of won the Lingfield, or ran well in the Lingfield trial, going to Epsom. I think she's got a chance, but no more than any of the others in the field. I think a bit like the Derby, it's wide open. A lot of these horses, when we come to the Epsom, Derby and Oaks, none of these horses have really run over a mile and a half. There's only a couple of them in each field that have run over a mile and a half. So there's potential for lots of horses to improve when they get their optimum conditions. Like the Derby, I think there's plenty of each way value to be found. At the moment, I'm sticking with Say, having suggested backing her a few weeks ago. But come the day, I'm sure there might be another one to have a look at.
OK, finally, just moving away from the classic generation, we'll take a look now at the Tattersall's Gold Cup, won by Al Kazim, who beat Camelot. What do you think this says to you about the relative merits of races like the Eclipse and the Arc?
Yeah, well, I've always been a big Al Kazim fan. I really like him. Halfway through the race yesterday, I thought there was something wrong with him. He was sort of not travelling. His tail was sticking right out, and I was wondering whether he was feeling the fast ground out there. But I just think he's a really good horse. Camelot was a bit disappointing for me. I think he did have a bad injury, or he had a bad dose of colic over the winter. So while I don't want to make excuses for him, having made loads of excuses for him at the end of last season, I do think there's something that we might not have ever seen the best of Camelot. Therefore, maybe Al Kazim didn't beat a superstar that we were sort of expecting, but I still think he's a good horse going forward. I think soft ground will suit him more. I think he looked to be at ease on the fast ground there, so I think we could see more from him. Yeah, a race like the Eclipse, that would be a good race for him, and take a bit of beating.
They're racing inside the final 150 yards, and Al Kazim and James Doyle are going to turn over Camelot.